Now, so we've seen all of the pushback. All of the conflict, all the forces that are arrayed against Israel, all the lies that are being told about Israel. But the amazing thing is, in the middle of all of that, and the wars that Israel has had to fight and so on, Israel is not just surviving, which is a miracle. Israel is literally thriving. And so let's take a little bit look at that. Would somebody begin by reading those first two sentences, starting with David Ben Gurion? You could say David if you like.
David Ben Gurion, Israel's first prime minister, said, "In Israel, in order to be a realist, you must believe in miracles. Israel is surrounded by hostile states 221 times its size in territory and 54 times its size in population. Yet the state of Israel has not only survived, it is thriving."
Okay, and I'll read these verses. Zechariah 12, 8 and 9. "In that day the Lord will defend the inhabitants of Jerusalem." Now, if you remember this, but I mentioned to you before that I personally believe there are certain chapters, prophetic chapters in the scripture that speak about the days we're in now. And we're going to talk more about that, in a little bit. The days we're in now and the days we're coming into. And included in that, Zechariah 12 through 14 and Ezekiel 36 through 39. So here, again, it's saying, "In that day the Lord will defend the inhabitants of Jerusalem. The one who is feeble among them in that day shall be like David." And that's really talking about David's prowess, as a warrior. Even the weak one among them will be like David. "The house of David shall be like God, like the angel of the Lord before them. And it shall be in that day that I will seek to destroy all the nations that come against Jerusalem." Now, I got news for you. You might want to fight somebody, but I would definitely recommend not fighting God. Okay, let's go on. Next paragraph. Could somebody read that, please?
Prior to Israel's War of Independence, the surrounding Arab armies had no difficulty obtaining arms. Jordan's Arab Legion was armed by the British and led by a British officer. Israel, on the other hand, had to smuggle in weapons, principally from Czechoslovakia. When Israel declared independence in 1948, the army did not have a single cannon or tank. Its air force consisted of 9 obsolete planes.
Israel could not arm themselves legally at this point. There's a cool documentary. It's called Above and Beyond. It's about some actually American pilots that were in the U.S. Army in World War II and happened to be Jewish, and they actually flew some of these planes that we're talking about here. But think about the arms that were available on the international arms market to those surrounding nations. And as we just read, Israel didn't have a single cannon or tank, and its air force consisted of 9 obsolete planes. After World War II, this is what they looked like. Yeah, okay. We're talking about David and Goliath here, okay? Let's go on. Would somebody read the next sentence, please?
"Nevertheless, in 60 years, the survivors of the Holocaust have become one of the strongest armies in the world, having won every major war despite being outnumbered by no less than 3-1 in every conflict."
Okay, now by the way, the planes look a little different today, and they are, they're supplied by the U.S. However, from what I understand, and I absolutely know nothing about this, once they get to Israel, they kind of gut the technology and they put in whatever Israel's technology is there. Okay, let's go on. Now we're just going to talk about the land itself. Remember, back to the beginning of the story, land and a people, a land and the people. Let's see. This is Ezekiel 36. Remember, this is one of those chapters that I believe speaks about the time we're in now, we're coming into. And it's interesting because the prophet is literally prophesying to the land. You think about it. They might think you're a little strange if you're out there and standing in front of a tree, prophesying. But at this point, prophet's not talking to a person, actually talking to the land itself. Ezekiel 36, 8 and 9. "Behold, you, O mountains of Jerusalem, mountains of Israel, you shall shoot forth your branches," remember that, "and yield your fruit to my people Israel, for they're about to come." So first we're talking about branches, trees, then we're talking about fruit, which would be agricultural, produce. Okay, would somebody read the next sentence, please?
Israel is the only country in the world that entered the 21st century with a net gain in its number of trees, which was achieved in an area considered mainly desert.
And go on. I'm sorry, next sentence.
Yeah. In 1948, there was an estimated 4.4 million trees in Israel, Since that time, the number of trees in Israel has increased by 450 million.
Just to get a visual of that, that's from the Negev desert. You can see in the back, of that photograph, that's more or less what the Negev desert looks like. And by the way, that has got to be in the spring, because Israel gets all, and Negev doesn't get much rain at all, but whatever rain it gets is in the winter months. So even the green in the back that you see is very minimal. That would be totally brown, as you get into later spring and into summer. But that's the Yatir forest in the Negev desert, and you're talking about 4 million trees just there. Okay, let's go on.
Israel has the highest per capita yield of agriculture and milk in the world. Israel's agriculture production has increased 12-fold over the past 40 years.
Okay, and the next paragraph, please.
Date palms have been growing in the Middle East for centuries. The average tree is approximately 18 to 20 feet tall and yields about 38 pounds of dates per year. Israeli date trees are now yielding 400 pounds of dates per year and are short enough to be harvested from the ground or from a short ladder.
Awesome. So we just read again, God telling the prophet to prophesy to the land, and you're going to bring forth your fruit to my people, who are going to be returning. If you want a visual of what the blessing of the Lord looks like, this is what date trees typically look like in Israel. And this is what, in the Middle East. And this is what Israeli date trees look like. How would you like your life to look like that? Just keep following Yeshua, okay? Because that's literally, I love that verse, that says, Yeshua is the vine, we're the branches. Without him, we can do nothing. But if we abide in him and his words abide in us, we can bring forth much fruit to the glory of God the Father. So if you want to look like that, keep walking with Yeshua. Okay, next verse, Isaiah 35, 1 and 2. The wilderness and the wasteland shall be glad for them. That's talking about the Jews who are returning. And the desert, I want you to see how literal this is. The desert shall rejoice and blossom as the rose. It shall blossom abundantly and rejoice even with joy and singing. If you want to see what the desert looks like when it blossoms like a rose, there you go. That also is the Negev desert. By the way, and this is pretty awesome, but Israel provides 5% of the flowers that are sold around the world. It exports 245 million roses every year. And on a typical Valentine's Day, Israel exports 60 million flowers to Europe. Okay, let's go on.
Has this always been the makeup of Israel's land? Has it always been roses and dates and all
That'd
this?
be nice. No, it wasn't like that at all. At one point, it was a land flowing with milk and honey, but eventually it wasn't. There is something that Mark Twain wrote. I don't know if any of you are familiar with it. He had visited Israel, and his thing was like, "What's the big deal? This place is a desert. I mean, it's almost deserted. No people here, nothing growing here. No, it's only as the Jewish people have returned that you see Israel blossoming like this. It's absolutely amazing. And, if you go up on the Golan Heights, there's a place that used to be a military installation or whatever, and it overlooks the border with Syria. And on the Israeli side, and this is sort of a desert area as well, on the Israeli side, you have these orchards, and it's beautiful, and it's green, and literally right at the border, it's desert. And from what I understand, not the current Assad, but his father, when he was the leader of Syria, he paid farmers to go there. He didn't like the way that looked. He didn't like the visual. He paid farmers to go there. They never could grow anything there. And so literally, this is just God bringing to pass his word, and it's neat to see it in photographs. Oh, and I think there's one more paragraph to read about that. Israel is the only country.
Israel is the only country in the world in the last several decades whose deserts have consistently receded rather than expanded. Deserts where olives, pomegranates, grapes, and strawberries are grown and which support thriving fish farms.
Okay, and this is just a picture of a vineyard also growing in the desert, in the Negev desert. Let's move on to social and cultural issues. Would somebody begin reading there. If you want, I mean, there are a number of different senses here. You can read till you get tired.
Israel is the only Middle Eastern democracy. It was the first nation in the Middle East to grant Muslim women the right to vote, and has the freest Arabic language press in the Middle East.
Let's just say that again. It has the what? The freest what?
Arabic language press in the Middle East.
Interesting. Okay. And the first nation in the Middle East to grant Muslim women the right to vote. Okay, let's go on.
Only 1.5 million Arab Muslims out of 330 million in the Middle East enjoy democratic freedoms, and all of them reside in Israel. Israel has more museums, more orchestras and publishers, more books per capita than any other nation in the world. Israel is the largest immigrant absorbing nation per capita on earth. Less than a century ago, not one person on earth spoke Hebrew as a first language. Today, Hebrew is spoken as the mother tongue of millions of Israelis. Israel is the only nation in the world that is governing itself in the same territory, under the same name, with the same religion and the same language as it did 3,000 years ago. This is after a 2,000-year dispersion.
Break and understand what a miracle all of this is. The only country in the world, that is inhabiting or living in the same land under the same name, speaking the same language and believing the same religion that they did 3,000 years ago, and that's with 2,000 years of having no land. And you know what's so good about that? I know you're all believers in Yeshua, and again, what that means is somewhere along the line you heard the biblical narrative and you believed it. Not only that, you're basing your life on it, not just in this world, but in the world to come. So we need to be happy about this, because what we're seeing is the truth of God's word, literally against all odds, coming to pass before our eyes. This is visual. You see it there. This is what you've based your faith and your life on. This should be a great encouragement to us. Okay. Let's talk about innovation in industry. Again, you can just read till you get tired.
Israel produces more scientific papers per capita than any other nation and has one of the highest rates of patents filed in the world. Israel has the highest ratio of scientists, technical professionals, engineers, and PhDs per capita in the world. Israel has the largest number of startup companies per capita in the world. In absolute terms, Israel has a larger number of startup companies than any other country except the U.S.
Okay, someone else?
Israel has the highest rate of entrepreneurship among women in the world. More Israeli companies are traded on NASDAQ than those from the entire European continent. Israel has more companies traded on NASDAQ than any other countries of the world except for China and those in North America. Israel has the highest concentration of high-tech companies in the world, other than Silicon Valley in the U.S. Israel has the largest number of biotech startups per capita in the world.
Okay, someone else, please.
The technology for cell phones was developed in Israel. Voicemail technology was developed in Israel. The thumb drive and memory stick were developed in Israel. Israeli scientists developed the first fully computerized, non-radiation diagnostic instrumentation for breast cancer. Israeli scientists developed the first ingestible video camera, so small it fits inside a pill, which is used to view the intestines from the inside.
Okay, I'll read this guy, I like it. Anyway, researchers in Israel developed a new device that directly helps the heart pump blood, an innovation with the potential to save lives among those with heart failure. Israeli scientists developed fingertip monitors to diagnose sleep and cardiac disorders, a system to correct severe curvature of the spine, a 10-minute ultrasound procedure that removes breast lumps, an MRI-guided ultrasound procedure that destroys tumors and uterine fibroid cysts without surgery, a procedure that bonds surgical incisions using cold plasma in minutes with minimal scarring and recovery time, and a painless procedure for delivering vaccines through the use of semiconductor technology. And by the way, when I just picked these out, there are so many of these innovations and so on that I could certainly not list them here. But all of these accomplishments were achieved while engaging in regular wars, facing immense security threats, and having to spend more per capita on its own protection than any other country on earth. That's a miracle.